good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Well, how bad's the problem first?
It is a problem for us. I mean, being a paramedic's a difficult job, and the mental health of our workforce is actually one of our major issues of absenteeism. It's one of our major issues of people being off work for work cover, and it's something we need to address.
Is there, I was talking to Graham Ashton about this, in the police force, there's sort of a suck-it-up princess approach. Get on with it, just cop it, you're a copper, what do you expect? Does that happen with the AMBOs? Is that sort of bravado?
The bravado's still there. This stigma of you don't talk about mental health, you can make it through yourself. It's a problem for us, and we want a situation where people in our organisation basically talk about mental health the same way they talk about someone having a problem with their leg or whatever. It just normalises. It's okay if you've got a mental health issue, and we need to talk about it.
I've talked to a few AMBOs over the years about what really gets to them. A few of them have said the noise of going to a bad crash and people screaming or families turning up and screaming, and a lot of them have talked about children. Is that the most confronting issue for an ambulance officer?
I think children, from my perspective, are. I think if I look at the cases I've attended over my career, they're the ones that stick with you. But I think it's also about the cumulative effect over a career, that you can see different types of jobs. You think you're doing okay with it, and one day you combine that with some family issue or something else going on, and it gets in. And you see very quickly people that thought, no, I'm okay, I can deal with this, they all of a sudden can't. And we want to try and get to them before that.
When were you first on the road?
1986, actually. I started my first day on the road was the Russell Street bombing. So, so first observer shift. It's confronted with those things. And I've got people in my group who, we still talk about that as sort of our first exposure to ambulance.
So you attended the bombing?
I didn't attend it. I attended the cases around it, but one of my colleagues in my group was actually in the middle of it. So it was a very difficult day for everyone concerned.
1986, what's that, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
What was the attitude then after a tough day, after a bad one, as the police used to go to the police club and drink too much? What did the AMBOs do?
Much the same. I've spoken to paramedics, particularly in country Victoria, and their way of dealing with this issue was to go and get drunk on a Friday night with the local police, that takes its toll over time.
Is there a case that stays in your mind?
I suppose it's interesting. I've become a father again recently, and so cases that I would have thought that were 20 years ago involving young children that had died flash back, and you sit there and go, I never thought that would happen to me, and it's interesting. So I think the cases involving kids, probably the most confronting case I ever attended was the lightning strike down at Eastern Beach in Geelong, which was as the first person there with multiple casualties and obviously distressed family. Those things you do your best, but they stay with you, and this is the thing. Over a career, these jobs will stick with you, and you deal with it, you talk it through, but they change you slightly every time.
What was the outcome of that case, the lightning strike?
Lightning strike, we resuscitated one person, but sadly the parents of the children involved died.
So there were two people?
Yeah.
Good grief. Okay, so what are you doing about it? What is the plan?
So last year, we're talking about this issue. So we've probably in the past been defensive and said we've got these great programs around peer support and counselling services. But one of the things the workforce are clearly telling us is we just need to accept there are issues around suicide in paramedics. There are issues around mental health and wellbeing. We set up a psychological health and wellbeing group with the unions and others around the table, and Dr. Peter Cotton, who's also been assisting Victoria Police, to actually talk about this issue. And we've, as being announced today, we've basically engaged Beyond Blue now with a $1.2 million program to provide mental health and wellbeing and suicide prevention training for every staff member in Ambulance Victoria. And the whole principle behind this is to normalise the conversation around mental health, that it's okay to feel the way you feel, and it's important that you do something about it.
So every staff member will get this. How long will the training take?
Training commences in the next few weeks. So we aim to have it completed by March of next year.
But how long will an individual? Is it a day? Is it a week?
So the training itself. So it's an interesting concept. It involves some online training first up, which we're a little bit sceptical about, but Beyond Blue have done some really interesting work in this space. It involves some face-to-face training with the Beyond Blue staff, and it also involves what they call a cool-down, an evaluation period to see how you're going. And the program itself picks up issues around depression, anxiety, suicide prevention, awareness. And importantly, it also is about having a conversation with your mates about how you're going, because that's something paramedics do really well in the community, but they struggle to have a conversation with their peers about how they're travelling.
Is this about, sort of, as I was saying to Graham Ashton yesterday, mental health first aid? Do you want the people, your staff, to be in a position of being able to understand and look at the people around them, look at their colleagues and deal with and say, hang on, mate, you might need a bit of help, have a talk.
That's exactly right.
So it's first aid, really.
It is. We want people to basically be able to know how to confront a colleague and say, look, mate, I don't think you're travelling okay. Do you need help? How can I connect you to help? Our managers as well. Sometimes we see behavioural issues in the workplace. They're actually around mental illness. And often they're dealt with as a disciplinary process when actually we need to understand what's sitting behind this, because there are other things going on, demons in their head we just don't understand.
Are you opening a can of worms here?
Well, yes, potentially. I think there is. We're seeing PTSD and other issues at the end of someone's career. I expect we'll see more issues around mental health raised. I think we'll see more work cover claims and other things put in. From my point of view, I'd rather deal early on with someone's mental illness before it gets to the point where they're at a significant endpoint, be it suicide or PTSD. So I expect we will see more claims and more issues. But to be honest, I think that's a healthy thing, because if we can deal with it early, we can get them back to work and get them well. That's important to us.
Well, good on you and good luck with it. I hope this spreads through workplaces. I'd like to see every workplace with somebody. I mean, we've got fire wardens, we've got first aid people who can turn up with a defibrillator. I would like to see people trained as mental health first aid in every workplace. Be a positive thing.
I'd support that, Neil. I think really what we want out there is where people feel just as comfortable saying I'm seeing a psychologist as they do seeing their GP, and it's normal in our society.
Thanks for coming in. Good luck with it.
Thanks, Neil.
Chief Executive, Ambulance Victoria, Tony Walker.